What would you recommend, Ms. Markowitz, if someone is deciding like, man, school counseling sounds great, but school psychology is awesome. Like if you got your first 4 years under your belt and then you were deciding whether or not you want to be a school psych or a school counselor, what should be things that people take into consideration, or how would you advise a young person to decide between those two?
Yeah, that's a great question. And especially because Mr. Webb and Ms. Henson and Mr. Magnet.
Mr. Phil's fine.
Okay. I'm sure a lot of the times, I know staff and families get confused between our roles and who's the psychologist, who's the counselor, what do we do? So that's definitely a great question, especially to explain to students if they're considering doing one or the other. Because I was in that boat. I didn't know if I wanted to do counseling or psychology. And I mean, I would say there's a lot of similarities. There's both roles take on so much. The main difference from my perspective is that, like Mr. Webb, what you were saying is, if you want to be a school counselor, you are working with all students. So you get students in special education, general education, English language learners. You're working with everyone, which is amazing how much y'all take on. And you guys do, a lot of mental health counseling one-on-one. I know you guys sometimes run small groups with students, and you work on student schedules, which is not something that I know how to do. So from my perspective, if you want to go in school
Neither does Phil.
Ouch.
He will learn. Yeah, but from
That's
my
my fault though, because he's my intern. But
It'll come with time.
Yes, we're still early on in the school year.
I'm still managing my own schedule, so.
And then for school psychology, I would say we largely work with the special education population. So that is doing more, it's more testing, it's less student interactions. We still get to do interviews and we still get to go into classrooms, but it's definitely more of an isolating job, I think, which is, I love the human brain and I love writing reports, and that sounds very nerdy, but it's something that really interests me. So that's one thing that I really wanted to do. Why I chose school psychology, I think, was having that balance of testing, report writing, and evaluations, and then also getting that one-on-one student time.
I could see too, I don't know, this semi-related, but that with school psychology, you have like a lot of it's a lot more tasks than it is just kind of open-ended in some ways. And as a school counselor, I feel like it's not always like, oh yeah, like we did the thing and now it's done. It's a little
like ongoing.
Yeah, it's more ongoing, and always, I don't know, figuring out different things that we can try. And I feel like with school psychology and school psychologists, you've got like tasks and deadlines and reports. And so it's a little bit more concrete in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're spot on, actually. That's another thing that I would let people know, like if they want to go into school psychology. And it could also be the frustrating part about it, because we do have these legal deadlines and timelines, so we have to prioritize tasks. And it could be frustrating because sometimes we want to take on so much more than we can physically and mentally get done. And it's really hard to explain unless you're doing it, but that's the hard part. I would love to just have more time to see whichever student I needed at the time, or whoever needed me at the time.
Well, you can always come over to the light side and be a counselor. No,
I could go work at Marshall Lake full time.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I like secondary, so I can't do that.
Right. Well, kids, you heard it here first. If you're a nerd, you should consider school. I
love being a nerd.
Yeah, for sure. I will say, like, a lot of my friends, like back when I was considering my master's degree, Seattle U opened up like a program for it at the time. It was a new program, and like 5 of them, like literally 5 of my good friends all enrolled in Seattle U and went there. And it's a great school. And they love their jobs. Like they'd rather be a school psychologist than anything else. And it's also very competitive. It's competitive to be a counselor, but school psychologists, they recruit you like all over the world. I mean, I went to NASP, the conference, the annual conference one year, and this was in New Orleans, and they literally had a table from Hoquiam, which which is like this really small city on the coast of Washington State, and they went all the way to the national because they're like, we can't hire school psychs. Like I have my friends get recruited. They're in Seattle. They recruited all up and down the West Coast, California. They're throwing money. We'll pay for you to move to be a school psychologist in our district. School psychologists are like guaranteed a job, I think. What do you think, Ms. Markowitz?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, there's a huge, I think part of that is because from my knowledge, there's a huge shortage of school psychologists within the U.S. So I think we are in such high need. And that's, I mean, kind of relieving. I admit, I thought that when I'm always nervous after graduation and having to go through the interview process and finding a job. But in the back of my mind, I knew that they need us out there. And so I would be able to get a job. So yeah, I think you're spot on with that.